We want to start this demo looking at just the socket part of this. We're going to build it up. So I'm going to start a new project here. You can go File, New Project, or you can use the button New Project, whichever way it works. And for now, we just need a basic Java application. We'll get into some of the fancier ones as we go, but for now, we're just going to be able to create our socket application. And so we're going to call it Socket Fun, just a demo application to get started with. We'll build other applications to do the full thing later on for the assignments and whatnot. So here is our main program. Now, remember, we need both a client and a server here. So just to fix this up and be clean right away, let's start off and turn this into our server. So we're going to rename this file. So we can go to Refactor and then rename. You can see you can also do Control R there on the file. So SocketFun, we're going to call this to our server inside of it. It's just very simple, so we have a clear view of what role this plays. So remember, we need a server to receive requests. We need a client to go and send requests. And so on the server side, we need a server socket. So I'm going to use server so here and hit Control Space. That's code complete if you haven't used that before. If you're not sure about some of those shortcuts, there's some videos out there on my YouTube link that'll help you with some of these shortcuts. But you have the server socket out here. And so the server socket gives us the basic foundation by which we can receive requests. And so we'll just call it SS. And so we can create a new server socket, Control Space again. And you can see it gives us, when I hit enter, it gives us the list of items. We need to at least provide a port number here. So the port number, we can do any number inside here. We're going to use port 67, just as a nice safe port that probably should be available out there. Now, right away, notice red underlined. The error says unreported exception. IO exception must be caught or thrown. So anytime we're working with things that do the internet, or things that do databases, or things that do something that could be external to my program, I have to deal with exceptions. Because what happens if the internet's down? What happens if this database isn't available? What happens if we just lose connection along the way? So we have to deal with those exceptions. And in this class, we're not super worried about smartly dealing with these exceptions. We just need to deal with them from a making it compile standpoint. We're not going to deal with everything that pops up. We're just limiting our scope. So what we can do is do a Alt Enter, hold down the Alt key, hit Enter, which gives us some options how we deal with this. So we can add a throws clause, or we can do a try-catch statement. I just like to add the throws clause because it puts it up here. And then I don't have to worry about any exceptions from now on for the IO exceptions. That'll just be taken care of. All right, so literally at this point, we're going to use the code small strategy. I'm saving my file, Control S. I'm going to run my file, and you can see it says build successful, which meant it ran. It didn't fail. This one line of code worked. That means port 67 is up and available. If I picked a port that happens to be used by some game or some other application on your computer, you would have got an exception here. Actually, we can see what this exception looks like if you just run the application twice. The new version of NetBeans, I don't think will let you do that. Yeah, it's because it grays this out, but it'll give you some exceptions like the port's currently in use or something along those lines. So here we have our server socket. It's up and running, and then now we need to go and get a client for that. So when we get a client, we get a regular socket back, and we need ss.accept. You can see it's already, I didn't even hit Control Space in this time, it's already popping up choices for me, and accept. So what this is doing here is it's giving me the actual item to listen to. This is like when I pick up a phone call. I have a receiver in my hand, I can talk, I can listen. Notice again, cannot find symbol socket. That's because we have an imported socket. When we did server socket up here, Control Space, that automatically imported. So when I have these little red ones need to import, I can do one of two things. I can come to this guy and hit Control Space and it'll automatically add it, or I can do, I'll show you the fix imports here, Control Shift I. Either one of those will fix the item, and then you can see it adds the import here, java.net.socket. So there's a couple tricks in NetBeans to help you do your code there. So now we have our socket. So now if I run the code, it goes up, and you can see it's going to start, and it's going to hang. It's going to hang. It's going to hang. Why? It's kind of like I picked up the phone. Okay, well, I've started a phone call. I haven't said anything. I haven't listened for anything. I haven't hung up the phone. So my code is just sitting there waiting. Until somebody calls in, this code will be hung. Okay. Again, I can't use the run here again. What I could do just to show you that error, I can go up over here, right click on this guy, and I can say run file. And if I do it again, now I get that bind exception. You see the address already in use. That's because I ran the server twice. Port 67 was taken by the first time I ran this program, and so the second time I try and run the program, I get this error, address already in use. So again, the other program's still running. If I go up to the run menu up here, you can see it's still running. Repeat build run. I can do stop build run. At that point, again, we go back to our first one. It was stopped after 54 seconds. That was, you can say, I ran two of them in a row. So this run will only run one application at a time, and it's limited. But I can always do this right-click run file, which is going to be really important here in a second. All right, so we need to do something after we accepted the client. Once we've accepted the client, let's say we're going to receive text. So I want to just receive some text, so I need a buffered reader, control space. This is all your file I/O stuff you should have learned in the last class. So this is our in is equal to new buffered reader. And for a reader, I need a reader, which is a new file, I/O. Wow, see, this is where you get a little bit stuck. I haven't coded this in a little bit. You got to remember, maybe go back and look. Well, let's see if we can remember what we're going to get from the server socket. From our socket. Excuse me. Oops. Sorry, I need to get rid of the new because there's no context here. So socket.get input stream. Yes, that's right. So now that remembers, input stream, that's what it's called. So I think it's called a new input stream reader. Yep, there it is. New input stream reader. I jogged my memory there as an exercise that you might need to do. You might not remember this. If you can't jog your memory that way, maybe you go to Google and say, hey, how do I turn these things over? But remember, what we're doing is we're taking the square peg and the round hole and finding an adapter between them. We have an input stream coming in. We want a reader. So what we need to do is something to convert those two, and the input stream reader takes the ones and zeros of the input stream and turns it into the text of the reader, and then the buffered reader is all set to go there. All right, so now that I got my reader, I need a line, which is in.readLine. So that's the whole point of the buffered reader, is read one line at a time. So while the line, here you go, while line not equal to null, all right, then we're going to, let's just print out the line like we did in the demo in the lecture. System.out.println. And then we can't forget to read the next line. Now there's some fancy ways to do this all at once. You can do some fancy stuff with here. I'm not worried about super fancy code. You just got to remember to read that again. And then at the end, if I want to be super fancy, I can do ss.close just to make sure my socket closes cleanly. It will close even if I don't do that as the object gets cleaned up. But this is the basic code. Now, I've kind of violated a little bit of my principle here in that I didn't test one line at a time. Well, with the socket stuff, it becomes a little bit tough to do that because I need to have a client on the other side of this. But notice I've only written, let's see, between line 20 and line 31, I've written 11 lines of code total. I did test a couple of those along the way. So I can only really test the first two without the client, so I need to come back and do that later on. So I added another several lines of code just to give me a structure. It's not the worst bit of expanse ever. What I don't want you to do, particularly if you're a new coder, is go off and write 40 lines of code, particularly if they're not getting compilations problems out of the way, and then try and test them all at once. Don't just type what you're seeing. You need to understand each and every line we're typing in here. So hopefully you understand this gets us the server socket. This gets us the actual phone call, the telephone receiver, the inputs and outputs. And from that, I go get the input side of it. This is what's being sent to us. We're not sending anything back yet. This is just what we're receiving. And then here, I get the reading one line at a time. And then here, I get the first line here. Then I go and check if the line has something and printing it out. And then I keep reading lines until I no longer receive lines, and then I close it. So I'm listening to one conversation with this server. That's all I'm going to do for now. All right, so I'm going to pause here, give you a little bit of break, maybe code this a minute. Then we're going to come back and do the client in the next video.